Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the campus of Central Washington University in Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Thanks so much for joining us. We're late in the alphabet, and yet you are here. More than 170 of you live. The local time is 7:48 a.m. Pacific time. And today's date is Saturday morning, February 22nd of 2025. Let me give you a shot out the window. It's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. We have a very foggy, gloomy morning, but the sun is supposed to come through, and then we're supposed to get a bunch of rain the rest of the weekend. And here we are in the friendly confines. There is a car out there, and I have to get this off my chest, otherwise I'll keep being annoyed by it. Pleasantly annoyed, but annoyed nonetheless. Pleasantly annoyed, is that even possible? There's some sort of astronomy event this morning. Okay, great. There's a bunch of physics majors showing up. They're all young boys. They're 19 years old, 20 years old. They've all got their phone. They're all pale-skinned. And they're showing up one at a time in the last 25 minutes. I'm trying to get ready for you guys, and the building's locked. And so these kids just keep showing up, and they're standing outside the building. So I walk down the hall, I let somebody in, they're like, mumble, thanks. And they keep showing up. They keep trying to text their friend, I guess. They're just standing out there, and I'm tired of going down and letting people in. It doesn't occur to them to, put a rock in the door, put something in the door, keep the door propped open. Our ways of the old world are not being passed along to the young generation. Or these young guys just, whatever, their heads, they're half asleep, whatever. So I'm still seeing these guys wandering around out here. I'll take my walk and let a whole gaggle of them in, but it's hilarious. Okay, thank you for allowing me to share that. Can I say hi to a number of you before I take my walk and have my physics major net? Good Lord. All right. I can't do it all. All right, settle down. Where are you viewing from today? I'm amped. I like today's show. I can't wait to get started. Okay, I need some locations, please, if you wouldn't mind. Madison, Wisconsin. Natchez, Washington. That's Pat the Pilot. Thank you. Good morning, Pat. Brett is from Woodinville, Washington. Webb Lake, Wisconsin. Garrett, the Dutch Night Owl from the Netherlands. Hello, good afternoon, good evening to you, Garrett. Scrolling way too fast. Hood River, Oregon. That's Hood River, Gary, everybody. Aviano, Italy. Ciao from Italy, says Jim. Thank you, Kimie. Fort Vancouver. Orlando, Florida. I'm propping back now. Jim says a phone could prop open the door, just saying. Okay. Down to live. Yeah, I've been the doorman this morning. I'm trying to work on the chalkboard. I'm trying to do a Sharpie sketch. And every time I look up, there's another lost kid with headphones on. And what do I do? Bernadette from the Philippines. I promise I'm okay. It just helps to get it out. I don't think there's an edgy side to me that is real, but I don't think most of you like it. You like the soft, gentle person. So I need to find that zone. There's another one right there. God. Oh, man. Marie is in rainy Washougal. Adam DeBomb is from American Flag, Idaho. Nina is in Whitesburg, Georgia. I always like finding new names, new to me at least, like Dave Dennis in Post Falls, Idaho. And you're like, I'm not new, I've been here every time. Well, I don't know, I'm an older gentleman. I have short-term memory issues these days. Okay, Chelmsford, England. Scrolling back, just finding a few more. And then I need to start thinking about today. I've been up since 2:30. That's probably obvious to you. Not on purpose, but my eyes popped open and I'm like, I got to get ready for today. And I got a lot of work done. And I'm happy what I slapped together, but it's like I'm a grad student, man. It's like I'm still in grad school, which is good. It's good for me. And I didn't pull an all-nighter, but I got 6 hours of sleep. Gary Paul, Stilly Gary, is here. Thank you, Gary Paul. Ian is deep in the Chuckanut. David is in Fairwood, Washington. I got to wet my whistle here. Oscar's from San Diego. Bunch of old-timers here. Regulars, in other words. Eddie from Nashville, Tennessee. Looking for a variety of new names. Cynthia from Byron, Wyoming. Hello, Cynthia. Bill's in Newport, Washington. I'm scrolling way back now. Just trying to slow the chat down. Butteville, Oregon. Yeah, the Oregonians are getting their feelings hurt. Lately, especially. Talking about Calderas, and I'm not talking about their favorite Calderas down there. Sorry. All right, I am loopy. I'm ready for lunch and a nap. But like I say, I'm ready to do the show. I hope you like it. Down to live, we'll do 3 more, and then I'll start thinking about today. Craig is in Costa Mesa, California. Alberta Gary is one of the multiple Garys that we have here. John Nash. Looks like we made it, John. You and I, Key change. Google Earth by Glenn says, Oregon, build your own calderas. Don't start that, Glenn. Come on now. Come on. Yeah, there's a twinkle in your eye, but come on. These guys are serious. And I do have a couple of clips from Smith Rock, but I don't think we're going to get to it today. Don't start anything in here, Glenn. Sabers in Baja, Kirk's in Sweden, Quebec City, Luc, Coinville. Bonjour, Luc, from aux États-Unis. There's Jennifer from Boise. Hello, Jennifer. And Jillian from Pasco. Wonderful. Okay, so I have no thank yous, which is fine by me. I have 5 minutes before we start today's program. We have a 500 live viewers and building. There's Lindsay Malone checking in. Good morning, Lindsay. And I think it's time to be the parapro out at the playground and round up the kids. Thanks for joining us. We will start our program in 5 minutes. Hot mic. I want to give you a shot of some of these kids. I'll find a couple if the camera's live. Okay. Miss Kopp is here now. Pat Miller's here. Focus. What are we doing? Okay. Everybody is rooting for you. You don't have to convince anybody that this stuff's cool. They're here. They like you. They like the content. They keep showing up. So you're visualizing people that are out there with a smile on their face. They're having a nice morning coffee. They just woke up. They're in their robe and slippers. Just relax. They're in a good mood. They're fresh. You put all this stuff together, just enjoy it. Just let it go. Just let it go and just follow what you've put together. It's all there. You just go from slide to slide, right? And how are you starting? You're barely doing anything. You're going to the slides like as soon as possible, right? Right, okay. Ready, break. Ready, break. Oh, physics majors, Daddy's coming. A pleasant good morning to you all, and welcome to today's episode. It's Saturday morning, and this is episode Y. I just noticed that I mistyped. It says X, I guess, right below this, but I think you know. This is episode Y, called More Calderas. At least I typed that correctly. More Calderas. Yeah, so it's late in the alphabet. Things are a little ragged. I'm limping into the finish, but that does not mean that I am sleepwalking through the remaining 2 letters of the alphabet. I have a lot of good stuff for you today. I'm excited to share what I have for you. And it's mostly work of other people. Team Caldera is back at it again. So yes, this is called More Calderas. You're like, come on, man, you need better titles. Like, you need a different screenshot. You put your head on the screen grab that you can place on the video, and More Calderas. You're not going to get any clicks with that. How about like family of 5 perishes in volcanic cauldron? Like, you'd get 1 million views. And you're right. But that's not the goal. The goal is to have a series. The goal is to talk about the content. The goal is to have substance. The goal is to have a warm community that's inviting and collaborating with whomever. Oh, physics people talking very loudly down the hall at 8:02 a.m. Pacific time. God bless them. They're here. You can't hear that, but I can. So, we're going to launch right into this. And if you missed the last episode called Uplifted Calderas, then that's required viewing for us to continue today, because this is part B. This is part 2. This is the follow-up episode. And our goal is to arrive at the Goat Rocks today, because episode Z, which will be our last episode of the series, here we are today and why, and you know that 5 days from now will be our thrilling conclusion to the alphabet, and episode Z will be called Goat Rocks. So I don't know how long it's going to take us, but I can't quit you. I cannot quit you. I can't quit you, Brokeback Mountain. I can't quit you until we get to the Goat Rocks at the end of today. And then it will be nothing but Goat Rocks Project on Thursday for session Z. Okay? So I think I want to get right into it. We don't need this. We know our colors by now. We don't need that. We know that we are up here in purple time, which is the aughts, but we will be going all sorts of places in our color scheme today. We're not just confining ourselves to purple calderas. So these are names of all these calderas that are essentially north of the Goat Rocks in Washington. And I've learned a lot about these places, and there's still so much more to learn. But that's part of the flavor and the tenor of today's episode. So if I go to Circle Cam for the first time, we don't have to go anywhere down here. I do want to remind you that there are some places to do some extra reading. Aaron Donaghy is going to factor in, surprisingly, to today's episode. Mike Eddy is going to factor in, surprisingly, to today's episode. There's air fall from the Colson explosion up by Mount Baker in the Palouse. Are you aware of such things? Up here, we're going to have one of our big kabooms to make the Colson caldera a little more than 1 million years ago, and ash from that explosion has been found near Washtenaw, Washington, right along State Route 26, as well as the Lake Tapps area by Tacoma. But I digress. We're going to factor prominently a thesis by Simonson. There's a story there. I'll mention that we have an Erickson thesis as well. And I'm lingering here because I want to remind you that these are how you can find the Google Earth by Glenn Google Earth file that was discussed in the last episode, as well as the Team Caldera spreadsheet. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you got to watch the last episode. Come on, it's a series. Come on. So we go right away to the slides, and I just try to keep this pushing. I'm talking to myself. Keep it going, so that we can arrive here. I showed this to you last time. I'm going to show it to you again right now. This is our destination by the end of today. Team Goat Rocks. The Goat Rockers led by Hannah Shamloo, Central Washington University. Let's see if we get there in a timely fashion. A few of these things are new to us. No, they're not. Still distracted by all the action out in the hall. Now the physics majors are all taken off in their car. They're heading on a road show. Good for them. So this is an artist portrayal of the events of Southern Oregon at Mount Mazama 7,700 years ago. And something happened down there, rather impressively, to create this caldera in the Cascades. And this is the visual that we have in mind for similar kabooms. Maybe kaboom is the drinking phrase today. It may annoy you, but I think I like it. Similar kabooms to make these explosive calderas that collapse in Southern Oregon. How many more of these calderas do we have in Washington? And you're like, that shouldn't be that hard. You just look for a big ditch like that? Well, no. Most of these are way older than 7,700 years ago. This is just the most recent of the kabooms in the Cascades. But because of the work of Team Caldera and Dave Tucker and Paul Hammond and Wes Hildreth and a number of other mappers, Ralph Hagerud, Roland Tabor, and many, many others, there's evidence lurking, suspicious deposits in the Cascades that tell us this is a thing throughout the long history of the Cascade Volcanic Arc. Let's just settle on that for a second. Yeah, this is more calderas. That's the title of the episode, but it's more calderas if we allow ourselves to go back through all the colors. We're going to have calderas from blue time today. What? Green time, red time, brown time, purple time. As long as we've had the Cascade Volcanic Arc, we've had kabooms. That's what we're exploring today in the northern half, in most of Washington State. Not all, but most of Washington State. All right, very good. Keep it going. These are some cartoons from Dave Tucker up in Bellingham, Washington. And we'll be visiting again with Dave momentarily. Dave Tucker, who runs nwgeology.wordpress.com. And so he's got his stamp on these. Great. So Dave says if you want to make a caldera in the Cascades, we need a gas-rich magma. We might have some initial little minor events, and then there's a huge end-of-days type explosion, and we're collapsing the roof of that magma chamber, and we start filling. The floor is dropping. This is last time. We're dropping the floor. We're filling this stainless steel KitchenAid mixer bowl. And there's some outflow, but that's not going to last long because we've been doing so much erosion more recently in the Cascades. But we better our chances of preserving a caldera at all if we drop the floor, fill it with stuff. I know this is tough, but let's just say stuff, volcaniclastic stuff. And then, how many of these totally are gone from erosion? That's a decent question. How many calderas have we had in the history of the Cascades that there's just zero evidence of? Maybe there's hundreds. Maybe there's thousands. Maybe there's thousands of these that once upon a time existed, but have been lost to time. But the few that we've been able to find, and Team Caldera has found, have these deposits. So you are inside of the caldera. That's one of the, I want this pace to be brisk, but I feel like I want to connect with you just a little bit more before we get crazy with some depth. New to me is that if we're looking for evidence of calderas in the Cascades, we're mainly looking for caldera deposits. And if we find caldera deposits, we're inside of the caldera. I think even the most recent calderas, like Kulshan, there's nothing outside of the rim of the caldera. It's gone. So all these places we're visiting today, I think each time we see a deposit, it's caldera fill. That's the phrase. Caldera fill. The rim is gone, the outside stuff is gone, but the stuff inside of the mixing bowl is still there on occasion. And Dave Tucker helps us see this beautifully up at the Kulshan and Hannigan calderas. That's our story. Okay, we've got the concept now, I think. And detail from of this was covered last time, but we're going to do more detail now. I think I've set the hook. I think you've got it. There is a website that Dave runs, and he posted just the other day summarizing what he and I did on YouTube, that interview. And so you can get to this. I forget what the website is. I guess it's the website I just gave you. But you can just, into Google, you can put Northwest Geology Field Trips, and you'll get to a homepage that looks like this. Here's Dave Tucker and his cat. And let's go to Dave and hear another clip from our discussion recently.
It's not so much uplift as the erosion that I'm interested in, because it's the erosion that gives us these exposures.
Yeah.
And I don't have a photo of it, and I really wish I had keyed one up, but in the southwest quadrant of the Hannigan caldera, the surface rock are plutons, small plutons that intruded the caldera. So these are rocks that are younger than the caldera, but that crystallized about 2 kilometers deep and are now the surface. So that tells us that there's been about 2 kilometers of surface stripping since the caldera eruption in order to expose these post-caldera plutons. How's that for a mind blower?
Well, it is a mind blower, and I would be totally off balance, except just recently I think I was showing Paul Hammond's work where he's like, yeah, we've got Mount Aches caldera, and then here comes this pluton that's younger that's coming up through this thing.
Absolutely.
Is that a thing? Is that a pattern?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes. I mean, you got to have enough. I mean, the magma is still there, right? It doesn't go away. And so the magma body crystallizes over time. And if you erode deep enough, then you expose the magma body, or the magma intruded further upward into the caldera fill. And then with luck, it's exposed. In the case of Hannigan, the highest elevations in the caldera at Icy Peak and Ruth Mountain expose these post-caldera intrusions.
Very good. More from Dave Tucker coming in a bit. Let's keep it going. Today is a visual feast. It's not just visual stuff in people's offices. We're also going to go out into the field, and we're going to have all sorts of wonderful photos again. We've got some new photos from Backcountry Gary. We've got some new photos from Lindsay Malone. We have some new photos from people that I've heard from by email that I do not know, but they had beautiful photos as well. So this is another one of those hopefully enticing episodes where you're like, I got to get up there. I got to see this stuff for real. Or if I'm not able to get up in the mountains anymore and hike, at least I got Google Earth by Glenn. If I live halfway around the world, at least I can visit via the work of Google Earth by Glenn. So this is what we featured last time. This is the poster from 2009 where Tucker and Hammond say, we've got a bunch of calderas. We've got names. Some of them are confirmed. Some of them are suspicious and tentative. Some of them are barely possible, but we still think there's all sorts of calderas exposed in the Cascades of Washington. Well, that's news to Hannah Shamloo, Central Washington University. As you get to know it better and better and get to know that interior caldera fill, is it also just going to be a bunch of very old bedrock, maybe mostly Russell Ranch? I don't know.
Yeah, that's exactly our question. I think you're articulating that really well. And Dave Tucker's interview was actually really exciting to me because, first of all, there's way more calderas in the Cascades than I realized. Like,
Same here.
I'm just going to say it, okay?
Same here.
I'm a caldera lady, but that's Yellowstone. But thinking in Cascades, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely ignorant on the amount of calderas that we have mapped and that we know about. So I had the same question watching Dave's interview, which was, do these caldera forming eruptions mark the onset of these volcanic systems? Like, is that, and that's one of the questions we're asking with this proposal too. I don't think we're going to be able to answer it in just one project, but
no.
Is there some sort of time pattern? Yeah, I think if I'm not going on a tangent here, is there?
You're not. No, this is like, come on, man. If how weird is the Goat Rocks area?
Right.
To start with a bang and to have that caldera blast a hole in a place that hasn't been active cascade-wise,
Right.
for tens of millions of years earlier. Is that the birth? Is there a caldera at the birth of Rainier? Is there a caldera at the
Baker.
birth?
Yes. I have the same question. And yeah, that's one of our questions here too. I don't know how we're going to answer it immediately. I mean, Finch needs to do some characterization of geochemistry and some ages, but I think in future generations of CWU students here, I feel like that's something I want to work towards, is how unusual is it to have this caldera forming eruption? How do you get a caldera forming eruption in the beginning of these volcanic complexes in the Cascades? And again, it comes back to how is the basement influencing the magma in the earliest parts of volcano's life?
And it sure seems like I get to work with this young, talented scientist. I'm extremely lucky to have her here. And I say I because I love collaborating with her. She's just fun. She's smart. She's quick. She's funny. And we're going to continue to feature her, not because of her project, not just because of that, just because she's an inspiration to so many of us. Another one from Hannah.
Or Adams, or Rainier. So that's the third prong.
That's the third prong. And so whatever you... So that's an interesting thought. So you got 4 years at the Goat Rocks. I don't want to plan your next 20 years, but I mean, just like you learned a few techniques in Baker, and now you're down at Goat Rocks using some of those with the first of your prongs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you run into some new techniques or new narratives or new whatever, and then you say, well, let's pick up and move to Rainier or something else. Is that possible?
Oh, I would love it, Nick. I would love it. That is the goal. I hope I have the privilege of having a long career in the Cascades in this area, and that includes Rainier. I am totally interested in Rainier. And honestly, when Dave Tucker was talking about those calderas, I was like, man, I have so many questions that I want to answer, but one thing at a time. I can't. One
thing at a time, but yeah, when I'm telling Tucker, like if I was a young professor, I'd see all these masters.
Yeah.
Of course, I was thinking of you. Like, why wouldn't?
I was thinking it too. I was like, Dave, let me in. Put me in, coach. Like, let me do some stuff in that area. There's no time, but eventually it'd be cool to start working on those.
I think I want to say it. I was going to save it till episode Z, but I think I want to say it right now. Last winter, with all that Brett stuff and all that Ice Age floods research, and I was trying last winter to encourage new work on the Ice Age floods. It didn't work because all the people doing the work are over 50, basically over 60. And it was very difficult to find anybody young and motivated to dive into these open questions. Remember all those open questions we had last winter? It didn't work. Here we are a year later. It didn't work. Nobody's working on it. It kind of, I thought, was fun to put those to-do list, basically, of stuff to work on, and then there is nobody doing the work. It's different this winter. Who are we talking to? Who am I really talking to? I'm talking to that gal, Hannah Shamloo, Kelly Wall, Mike Eddy, Isla Pamukchu, and others. They're all in their 30s. They do have a full career ahead. They do want to work in the Cascades for decades. I really hadn't made that total connection till right now, listening to Hannah right there. So yeah, we've been leaning towards trying to get new interest in these things like calderas or other things in the Cascades and finding interesting questions and seeing what work has been done and try to promote new work. But they're here. They are working on it. They're coming in from all over the place to work in the Cascades. It's exciting. And I didn't quite see that contrast with last winter till right now. Fun. Now that I say that, let's go back to two older gentlemen talking on Zoom. No offense, Gary. Gary himself is young at heart and is providing some clues and some tips a couple weeks ago now, which got us to where we are late in the alphabet. Thank you, Gary Paul. What's up with the Calderas and the Cascades? And I've been chewing on that ever since, and I don't know how far we will get with answers, but just an inventory of all the Calderas that have been dashed. Most of them are just dashed. I guess they're dashed for a reason. They can't make a solid line. There's not. Sorry to interrupt before Gary speaks here. I guess this is the moment. I forgot this, but I guess this is the moment that initiated the work of Team Caldera. I guess it wasn't in a live stream. I guess it was in that thing right there. And before I knew it, this Team Caldera thing started making the inventory, spreadsheet and other things. We're going to review that in just a second, but that's the moment. Let's continue because Gary's going to give us a bunch of specific hints and tips that are the crux of this episode. A clear topographic rim or whatever, but there's got to be more than a dozen. Well, that's a decent question for this next couple episodes. How many? What's the number? How many mapped calderas exist in Washington? Period. And I assume most of those are in the Cascades.
Yeah,
How many?
Paul
A
Hammond's
dozen?
map had a bunch of them. It seemed like.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like down at Mount Aix and Fife's Peak, I think both had
Right.
dotted lines around both of those, and I think there was another one I can't think of right now.
Well, that's the point. I think that. So what do you need? You need 60 years of one guy going back every summer to one area to finally get to the point where he can see whatever he's got, a half a dozen calderas. Now think, are there 55 calderas waiting to be discovered, and you just need somebody willing to devote 50 straight summers to go find them? I don't know. Or is there something special about that area between Yakima and Rainier?
Well, Ralph Hagerud, you talked to him. I mean, he found the one up doing his, I think it was when he's doing his PhD up at north end of Ross Lake. And then there's also the to the west of there, the Big Bosom Buttes just east of Yellow Aster Butte, where we were a couple summers ago, which I don't know has been looked at really at all.
What age are those? The big bosom.
I think they're green.
Really?
Yeah. And that's right in the middle of the Chilliwack. I think I might have sent you a picture of that one.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm having a hard time keeping up on this. There's green calderas. What's the one Hageroon found? Same one you were talking about, or was that different?
No, that's the one above Ross Lake. So that one, the Mullen paper showed that as 13.
Oh, that's the Rom.
Yeah.
They must have named it after Dave Rom. Do you think? The guy at Washington State. We're about, if you're losing patience here, we're about to start a trip. We're going to start in the north and work our way down to Goat Rocks, north to south, visiting place after place, photos, maps, other things. But we're still kind of in setting the hook, kind of the overview, kind of like teasers. And Gary is laying out these little jewels. And yes, I've followed up with a few former students of Dave Rom, beloved geology instructor that tragically died in a plane crash. Don Ring, the guy that I used to work with, was a co-teacher with Dave Rom. So yes, the Rom Caldera, Mount Rom, R-A-H-M, named after very popular geologist Dave Rom from back in the 70s and 80s, I guess, maybe 60s. I did email Ralph Hagerud about his discovery of the big bosom. Men are pigs, right, ladies? So anyway, I didn't hear from Ralph. Good guy, just didn't hear from him. So let's go back and get a couple more clues from Gary, and then we'll start our trip. Don't advance, just go. Who died in a plane crash?
I mean, there's actual Mount Rom up there, R-A-H-M.
I'll bet you. I'll have to
But
look into that.
It could be.
Well, maybe I'll interview Haggerud and get that story. That's kind of interesting. So tell me that again. Okay, now I'm officially interested. If Ralph Haggerud is the guy that found that Ram caldera, that's what you're saying,
I think so.
and Roland Tabor mapped it as a certain age, and then Mullen says, no, 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 it's half as old. Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
yeah.
Okay, I need to try that. I need to. I'll email Ralph today and see if I can get him on screen. That'd be fun to follow that angle.
Yeah, I mean the ages of these things they do evolve over time, and just as you know,
Right.
there's this paper had been sitting there for what six?
All right. So that's a theme that's going to come up today. We have ages from somebody who's doing the work in the 60s or the 70s, and then somebody comes 25 years later, 30 years later, and say, well, no, those dates are way off. Here's the new dates we have. And then I suppose 30 years from now, there'll be new work yet that's even more precise. So keep that in the back of your mind. I think we need to start our trip, don't we? Okay, you know, one of the hallmarks this winter are photos from the guy that you just heard, Backcountry Gary Paul. All through the winter, he's been laying down these rainbow labels, working with the color scheme that we all know and love at this point. Let's go. This is the official end of, I hereby declare that these are the official colors, and we'll be mostly in purple time today, and we'll be in purple time session Z on Thursday as well. But we'll do a little brown, a little red, a little green. We'll be even back in blue today. Let's go north to south. Are you ready? Eric Hutton says, road trip. I agree, Eric. Let's go. So we start way up on the top, way up by the border, by Bellingham. In fact, I think I want to do this. This is what I was trying to draw with the physics majors knocking on the door. So I didn't totally finish, but I think it's enough. So active stratovolcano, Rainier, Glacier Peak, Baker. A set of 4 stratovolcanoes that are all extinct. They're gone. They're dead. They're half eroded. They're mostly eroded. That's the 4 cones of the Goat Rocks. That's coming in the next episode. But we're not talking about the cones today. Instead, we're talking about these circular calderas of various ages. One set that will be highly featured today just north of Snoqualmie Pass. This is Interstate 90. You remember back early in the alphabet, this was our boundary between North Cascades and South Cascades. We kept talking about the major differences between North and South, but we don't care about that now. We're just hunting for calderas of various ages, so the colors are really working with our color scheme if you haven't figured it out by now. And maybe you can't see the colors as well as I was hoping, but whatever. I had to be the doorman, Carlton the doorman. So let's go up here to Big Bosom Buttes, Ram Caldera, and other calderas up in the Mount Baker neighborhood. Gary, let's go. View east from Winchester Mountain. Means nothing to me, but some of you that know the backcountry know that area very well. Very, very old fruitcake, exotic, Twin Lakes. And here's North Big Bosom Butte, South Big Bosom Butte. Caldera fell 35 million years ago. Is that real? Does everybody agree? Crazy. Push in just a little bit. I mean, if this is the case, and we can go back 35 million years and just find a bunch of pyroclastic flow deposits and volcanic breccias and other things, isn't it likely we'll find a bunch more calderas? You just need some caldera-seeking glasses, I think. Okay, let's leave Big Bosom. That's all I have there. Let's go to the Ram caldera, named after Dave Ram. Lindsay Malone from Seattle giving us plenty of photos here. She chose yellow because it shows nicely on the photo. It's kind of yellow/brown. And 13 million years is the date, apparently, even though that was not the date from a generation ago. We're in a caldera, apparently, in the Chilliwack Batholith. I see Jeff Tepper's with us today. Thank you, Jeff. Gary Paul, similar photo from Mount Ram. And you're like, give me more. Give me 20 minutes on the Mount Ram caldera. I don't have it. This is a survey. I'm just trying to flesh out in a travel fashion, just highlighted segments of Google Earth by Glenn. And no, I don't think I'm going to struggle with Google Earth again today. That was enough entertainment last time. Circle cam. Can I remind you who Team Caldera is? We introduced them late last time in episode W. Glenn Cruikshank, Spokane, Washington area. Lindsay Malone, Seattle, Washington. So I should have flip-flopped these. Lindsay's in the west and Glenn's in the east. It doesn't matter. Both of these guys have been collaborating. They're strangers. They've only met each other once at the Downtown Lectures last spring. But they have been close collaborators, and it's so wonderful to have such great energy and dedication by these two viewers. And Lindsay's going to go another couple steps beyond today. Here's Lindsay's main contribution from Team Caldera, a spreadsheet. You can find it at the website, color-coded. Glenn took website the spreadsheet information, put it into Google Maps. You can find this down below in the description down below this window right now. And Google Earth, you can cruise around on Google Earth, and Glenn has things coded by color. So far we've done Mount Rom, Big Bosom Butte, and we're going to do a little bit more Hannigan and Colshan. So we've got 4 major calderas right up by the border. You've seen these last time. They're so gorgeous, I want to show them again. Of course, this is Backcountry Gary. View west from Table Mountain. There's the Table Mountain flow that's 300,000 years old. All of this is Colshan fill. Colshan caldera fill, 1.15 million years old. And there's a corresponding tephra deposit, a white stripe, right along State Route 26 as you drop into Washtenaw on the way to a Cougar game. Crazy. Again, revisiting these glossy, beautiful, sexy images from Backcountry Gary late last time. Hannigan caldera, 3.72 million years old. Blocks of exotic stuff occasionally, exotic fruitcake here. There's an older part of the Chilliwack batholith, more exotic terrain. You can see why this area up by Mount Baker, to the east of Mount Baker, is a terrific outdoor laboratory for geology in the state of Washington. Hard to beat a place like this. Iceberg Lake. I'm ignoring these quite young andesite lava flows and other things, just no time for it in the episode, in the alphabet. I can't get over this photo. I'll show it again briefly. Look at how razor sharp the boundary is between these two areas. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cute. There's an unconformity here. Well, not really. I guess technically it is, but we're now thinking about these calderas, and we know that the floor dropped. There was nothing but Darrington phyllite here until there was a kaboom 3.72 million years ago near Mount Baker. We dropped the floor, so there's probably a bunch of phyllite way the hell down below, I guess. And then this is the very top of the stuff that's in the mixing bowl. But the boundary, I still can't get over this photo. And yeah, so that boundary was like over here, I guess, or something. Man. Back to Dave Tucker, the expert on the Hannigan caldera. He gives us a bit more detail. Double header. What?
Into a very widely, very heavily backpacked area. I mean, he was in there 30 minutes. He said, oh, there's a caldera here.
Wow.
And there had been generations of geologists hiked through here.
Yeah.
Students from Western and Western faculty members, and one Western faculty member in particular thought that Mount Baker was his mountain and really resented that anybody else was poking around in there. But this fellow, now long gone, had no concept of what a caldera was, and so he really objected to the interpretation.
Well, I had my suspicion. I didn't know, but I don't miss those old days. I got to tell you, I don't miss those old days. Seriously.
Me neither.
I mean,
me neither.
Okay, good.
Okay, so you happy with this one? I got a couple more.
I love that one. Let's keep going. You're not going to top that one, I don't think, but go ahead, please. Oh,
How's
maybe
that?
so. Maybe
So,
so.
so this is clearly a totally different scale.
Yeah.
So these little black lenses in here are fiamme. These are crushed pummices.
Mm-hmm.
So when the magma erupts, it's silicic. In the case of Hannigan, it's a rhyolite or a dacite, rhyodacite, about 69% silica. So it erupts as pumice.
Mm-hmm.
And when these huge volumes of pumice accumulate, filling up the caldera, the mass of the deposit crushes the pumices. Think of them; they're hot and they're full of gas bubbles, right? So they collapse down and they make these little lenses called fiamme, Italian for little flames.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see these shapes, you're seeing crushed, collapsed pumices. And this is what we call a welded tuff.
Oregon. Physics students. There's a bunch of drinking words in the live chat in this episode. Back to Dave Tucker.
So hot that the ash deposit welded itself together. But in it are also lithic fragments. These are fragments that are not related to the caldera, but are the rock that the caldera blew up through. And so included these rocks, this one, and that one, and that one are remnants of previous volcanism. So that's how we knew there was some sort of volcanic activity here in Hannigan before the caldera formed 3.7 million years ago.
And in Colshan, there'd be similar little blocks, but they'd be Nooksack and other just crazy
Correct.
Exotic stuff. Wow. Okay,
Correct.
that's so
Correct.
cool.
Well, like I said, there's a very few older dikes around the Colshan caldera, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Wes determined that, to the best of his field knowledge, which is quite extensive, we never found any volcanic clasts in the caldera fill.
Very neat.
So this rock is what that whole huge south face of Hannigan Peak looks like. This is what it is.
Unbelievable.
Pretty amazing.
And it's mostly solid. It's mostly welded. There's not
it's
this.
rock. It's you sample it with a hammer.
Jesus. Okay.
Well, now this is also caldera fill at Hannigan. You like my scale?
I do.
I obviously took this on the first day of my field work that particular day because there's no bruises on the apple yet from backpacking it around. But so this is caldera fill. This is all ash, intracaldera ash, but there's a lot of blocks in it.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these are volcanic as well. So in this case, there's so much breccia within the volcanic deposit that the deposit couldn't weld. It couldn't compact enough because the whole thing is supported by all these blocks. So there's no fiamme in this deposit.
Yeah, okay.
There's pumices. They're very badly weathered and leached, and I couldn't get any decent chemistry out of them. This is also part of the Hannigan caldera fill.
How wrong is it to say that volcanic breccia is like a talus field inside of the caldera wall?
That's not wrong. In part, it is a talus field. Let's go back to this one. And so here we got this big black lens of wall rock, and that's clearly a landslide deposit. So this is all the same stuff that just slid into the caldera as it was collapsing. And at the same time, it's filling up with this stuff. Then the wall collapsed, and then the eruption continued and buried this landslide. So, you know, we're looking at a 30-second interval between here and here that happened to be covered up with a landslide.
Amazing.
But other stuff is smaller fragments that were just blasted out during the collapse and the big, huge eruption cloud and then settled back down into the caldera.
Well, now I'm getting greedy. Like I'm not going to quit on that clip. This is an extra long clip, but come on. There's literally, you can count them on one hand, the number of people who have thought carefully, thoroughly, and mapped and published on calderas in Washington. This is a rare opportunity. And I really like the back and forth here. I'm getting greedy right now, which leads to the double header thing, which I thought was brilliant by Dave. We can go back. If we can go back one more time to your big face with the W, I mean, there's no way to talk about how much time total, is there? Like with that whole, I mean, I know it's a double trap door and all that stuff, but like, is this over the course of 500,000 years or like one Tuesday afternoon or like?
We're looking at much closer to the idea of a Tuesday afternoon and the Mariners are getting beat. So perhaps over the course of a double header.
I love it.
These caldera collapses are very rapid. I mean, they may continue for a period of days.
Right.
Or even weeks, but I don't think weeks. I think we're looking in the scale of days at the most for this, if not hours.
Incredible, really incredible. And yeah. Okay, a couple things. I just see Jeff Tepper said, I've looked at that face many times. Wish I had had Dave there to explain what I was seeing. Now, Jeff Tepper is an expert on so many things involving the Chilliwack-Basilisk area. To have that humility to share that with us, thank you, Jeff. That's inspiring just right there. But I think that speaks to a larger point, which is you can know a lot about Cascade geology, bedrock geology, igneous petrology. But this caldera thing seems to be like a different animal, and it takes a certain set of thinking and experience. And I'm setting you up for a couple of things. Remember, we're heading to the Goat Rocks. We're going to see a bunch of the same deposits at Goat Rocks. We'll see deposits that are similar but yet different. But I think some of you are understanding what I'm trying to do so far, and what you will eventually all see is that as we visit from place to place, we're going to start seeing some of the same things. At each of these different locations, the colors might be different, the ages might be different, but that's what I enjoy, is finding themes and features and concepts and realize they're not one little weird solitary story. Why can't we see the same kind of story in half a dozen or more places in the Washington Cascades? Forget about global, just in the Washington Cascades. Well, talking about the details of pumice in a welded tuff, let's go back to red time. Notice the outline here. Back to Hammond Land briefly. You've already seen this clip, but we just heard Tucker talking about it in purple time. Here we are in red time with Chris Mattinson.
Students are looking at different degrees of welding. Those black squished out things, that's where there's been a nice fluffy pumice and it's gotten squished while it's still hot enough. It's basically turned into something that looks like obsidian.
Oh, this little dude.
Spectacular.
No, he's too close to the weathering surface. I wouldn't even. Spark right here.
So this is pretty beautiful, and this would have come from up there on the wall where you can see almost like columnar jointing higher up in the flow there.
So you've already seen that clip. Are we going back to Hammond Land? Are we looking at the Mount Aix caldera and the Bumping River Tuff? We are not. We've already done that. But that could be another stop on our tour. But it's not. This is a list of new places for at least me to go, and maybe you. To me, this is the way to teach this stuff. I like doing it my own way. I don't know if you saw the talk yesterday at noon, but this is a different style of teaching. Using things like this. Ann Crowder, the wife of Roland Tabor, I believe. Oh, no, I got that wrong. Isn't there a geologist named Crowder? Somebody set me straight, please. But this is from the Geology of North Cascades book by Tabor and Hagerud. And Ann has many beautiful, beautiful diagrams. Dwight Crowder, that's it. Ann was married to a geologist, Dwight Crowder. And to me, the best part of this book are these hand-drawn sketches by Ann. So here she is helping us see the caldera. So it's not like Dave Tucker invented the idea of a Hannigan caldera. Yeah, thank you, Gary. But he's obviously put some science behind it so that we can see some of the details. Ruth Mountain, some of these places are going to start coming up now in our images. Well, here we go. Backcountry Lindsay, Ruth Mountain, gives us a date. Hannigan Caldera number 2, not quite sure what that means. View from Hannigan Peak. And then here's some fruitcake in the background. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Lindsay. It's like, who's Lindsay Malone? Is she a geologist? No, she's a forest ecologist. Who's Tom, the guy in Team Cascades who's doing all this map work? Is he a geologist? No, he's in construction. Who's Gary Paul? Is he a geologist? Well, he got a geology degree from University of Washington, but he's U.S. Forest Service, trail crew. These are amateurs. But I'm an amateur, essentially. I'm learning just right along with everybody else. Thank you, Lindsay. Beautiful photos. We're still very far north with the Hannigan Caldera, and we're getting more images to help us piece some of this stuff together. Lindsay's using our colors. Oh yeah, I forgot about this thing. Well, I'm not going to make the cut this winter. Sunset. Sunset, everybody. This is one more from Tucker, but we're going to go in a detour now. You ready? I sent Tucker on a detour during the interview. I want to go on a detour, and I think it's going to be helpful to look back earlier in the series. And also, you remember, I'm looking at you, but I'm mostly looking at Hannah Shamloo. I want her to be aware of all these amazing things, to keep her here at Central Washington University. Dave. Tangent coming on, but I don't want to derail you here. If you've got a few more, I'll bite my tongue until the end of your slides.
No, go ahead.
Okay, where's all the ash fall from this stuff? Downwind, why don't we just have blankets and blankets of stuff that still remain out in the Palouse or God knows where?
Look at the age.
I
So
guess.
let's say all this stuff is way out in the east.
Yeah.
It is older than the Columbia River basalt.
Yeah, right.
It's just not preserved. There may be places, say along here on the eastern flank of the Cascades, where there are some preserved ashfall deposits that are, in these cases, they would have to be lithified by now. But
Yeah,
you need to recognize them for that. And they may just be on one little cliff face where they're left. So it's kind of hit or miss finding these things.
Like, what is the oldest? What is the oldest known ash fall deposit? Like, I've never even had that thought. Like, it's all Pleistocene, I guess. Like, is there any 5 million year old ash fall deposit that's like lithified, whatever? Like
in this part of the world?
I guess, or anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Ellensburg Formation out here is Columbia River basalt sort of ages, and there is certainly silicic ash within that.
Yeah.
But is it a coherent deposit that hasn't been remobilized by streams?
Right.
And can you say that it's from here as opposed to from here?
Mm-hmm.
and it's from here as opposed to from here.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
when you
fun.
start getting into these really, really old deposits,
Right.
you need, that's where the geochemistry comes in to say, well, this thick pile of tuff here, the Eagle tuff of Tabor, matches chemically the humus that we find over here in the Ellensburg Formation, for instance.
Okay, well, that just gives me it's hard, but I think I have an answer. I promise I didn't have the answer before. I did some work. We're almost done with my tangent, Dave. Thank you.
I love tangents.
This young crackerjack geologist, Erin Donaghy, was doing all sorts of work in the Chumstick Basin, and she was working with these tuffs that were in between all these arcosic sands and conglomerates between Wenatchee and Leavenworth. And her advisor, Mike Eddy from Purdue, did his work on the Golden Horn. We're back like 49 million years ago. And I think they tied those things together. I think those are ash fall deposits 49 frickin' million years ago. I don't know if they've published on it yet, but like, there's my answer. So I guess it is possible if you know what to, like you say, if you know what to look for in a sedimentary basin, God, you could match up with some of these older calderas. So after our interview, Dave Tucker sent this photo. He's like, yeah, we've got ash in the Chuckanut. We've got an age for it. And I didn't reply back, yeah, that was Mike Eddy that got that date. But it was Mike Eddy that got that date. And it's time to talk about Mike and Erin. Who? Mike Eddy, Erin Donaghy. We're looking to add Erin Donaghy to a person in her 30s who's just starting out and wanting to do a bunch of work as well. Let's add her to the bullpen of young people who are already here. They're already experienced geologists in the Cascades, and they're just wanting to keep going, and they all appreciate what we're doing. They're all watching these episodes. I know I got a chip on my shoulder right now. I know I do. Come on, I know. What we're doing is so different. It's so different that it's easily overlooked. So that's why I have a chip on my shoulder. You understand what this is. These young, talented geologists can understand. But so many others in the world of science and science communication, they have no idea what this is. They don't respect it. That's why I have a chip on my shoulder. Goodness. So let's lean into these talented people who can see what this is and are going to use our work for decades. So how are we going to rope Mike Eddy and Erin Donaghy back into this episode? Well, we'll rope Gary Paul back in as well. Let's go back to blue time. Let's go back to blue time in the 40s. And there's evidence of a caldera in the Cascades almost 50 million years ago. Am I sure about that? Let's follow our nose with the slides. 48 million years old, the Golden Horn batholith has different ages. Mike has zoned out and aged different portions within the Golden Horn. I'm just grabbing one number here, but it's in the neighborhood of, 46 to 49 million years old. Let's be reintroduced to the Golden Horn.
If you look down on the highway here, you can see the color on both sides of the highway, that kind of orangish pink.
Yes.
As soon as you hit that driving up from the east side, which is just past, I think, the Klipchuk campground.
Yep.
You'll see that on the side of the road, and you'll see it going down west side over Rainy Pass, and all of a sudden it just stops. And right where it stops is where you get into the Black Peak.
Interesting. Okay.
Then there's a bit of Black Peak you drive through.
Well, maybe we should put that in this show. Like, if it's that obvious, almost like a roadside geology kind of tip. Like that's all Golden Horn behind you as well.
Yeah.
And just that kind of orangish. Okay, so that's the Golden Horn batholith. Here's a paper that you have at the website by Mike Eddy, his former advisor at MIT, Sam Bowering, Bob Miller from the Dream Team, and there he is, Jeff Tepper. And Eddie published beautifully on this fossil large volume silicic magma chamber. And Mike Eddy will be here on campus in May giving a noon talk. And he'll be talking about these fossil magma chambers, as he calls them. So the Golden Horn is featured here. Why? Well, here's Mike Eddy and Ralph Hagerud and Mike's PhD student, who you all know by now, Erin Donaghy. What was she doing? She's near Wenatchee. What's she doing in the Chumstick Basin? She's hunting for ashfall from a caldera forming explosion, a silicic eruption. Where? By Winthrop. The Golden Horn is where a caldera once stood, and the Golden Horn is the pluton that's underneath that former caldera. And you're like, oh, you're reaching now. I don't think we're going to hear an email. We're going to read an email from Mike Eddy in just a bit. A recent email from Mike Eddy on this topic. But I'm reminding you through the magic of video that whatever it was, 4.5 years ago, I'm out with Erin and Mike and Ralph, and we're trying to find McClincy's tufts. About Erin?
I have not.
Okay, all right, good.
Mike has those coordinates.
Okay.
He got up here back when we were both working in the basin, so probably around 2013 or 14, he was able to get up here. He used a student species from the 80s, McClincy.
Okay.
He has really detailed maps of where all the tufts in the Chumstick Basin are throughout the entire northern and southern part of the basin. And so we both have used those maps for our field work to chase down these tufts, and they've been amazing resources. But these two tufts are the Soonich tufts, and they are in the uppermost part of the Clark Canyon member in the Chumstick Formation. And so we are trying to find them. We think we have a good idea of where they might be based on some of the recon work Mike did.
You're like, okay, I'm losing it. I'm losing it right now. I don't. What are we doing? I thought we were talking about calderas. And now suddenly we're hiking above Leavenworth, Washington with Erin Donaghy? What are we doing? Let me try. These video clips I just showed you, the Golden Horn and the Chumstick with Mike Eddy and Gary Paul and Erin Donaghy, are all tied to a suspected highly silicic caldera in the Cascades that is where Washington Pass is located today, where the Golden Horn batholith is today. And where we were just hiking with Erin Donaghy was down here. And you're like, so there's a caldera down here too? No. This is the kaboom. Ash is falling over the whole area in the 40s during blue time. And the ash is still preserved between Wenatchee and Leavenworth. There are like half a dozen different tufts within the Chumstick Sedimentary Basin. And it's just new for me to go, well, that's cool. There's a tuff, an airfall tuff, an ash fall. Ash is snowing out of the sky from some kind of volcanic eruption. But we're in the Cascades, and I guess up until this point, up until this winter, I'm going, well, I guess it was some like ancient, I can't say the word ancient volcanic eruption in the Cascades. Well, yeah, but it's not a stratovolcano, it's too silicic. And then you go, oh, okay, so I don't know where it's not a supervolcano, but it's a big crater lake like Caldera, I guess. All right. Well, when I was out with Erin and Mike, they kept talking about McClincy. And they're on Erin's iPad. They've got McClincy's master's thesis. McClincy studied with Paul Hammond at Portland State University. And I'm like, at some point, McClincy was the drinking word. That whole, I'm working so hard to keep up with those guys hiking up that ridge. I said, who's McClincy? They're like, oh, Yeah, he's this guy that did this work and found these tuffs on a mapping project on a master's thesis, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And I'm like, oh, McClincy must be my age. Well, what does he think about your work you're doing? And they're like, oh, well, I don't know. No, we haven't thought to try to find him. Like, I'll find him. They're like, oh, come on. I said, no, I can figure out where this guy McClincy is, Matt McClincy. So I started Googling Matt McClincy a few years ago. I think I got into some Facebook, like Matt's wife or something, or a cousin or a neighbor. I can't remember. Anyway, I finally made contact with Matt McClincy, and I'm like, I know you don't know who I am, but I'm sending this video. These geologists, this summer, trying to go to your field area and find those tuffs that you were publishing on. They have a way to get new dates. Do you remember this? If you've been with me so many years? So I talked Matt McClincy into coming on a live stream with Aaron. So you guys Aaron and Matt chatted a little bit a couple days ago, and I thought it would be fun to get them in. So this Sunich Tuff, Matt, do you remember anything about that Sunich Canyon or something like that particular area?
A vague memory. I watched the video of you guys trying to find it, and then it caused me to where? I don't even remember that unit, But I do recall kind of going up into the head of that drainage and maybe a large outcrop in there, but not a lot. As I wrote up in the thesis, it was pretty well reworked and not clean enough for us to do chemistry on it. So I just kind of moved on from there. Didn't spend a lot of time with it.
So when I was filming, Aaron, you guys were having a hard time finding it, and we kept going higher and higher, and then you and Mike and Sam just kind of scrambled down low. So did you finally get what you were looking for from that Sunich Tuff, and have you gotten a date already?
Yeah, so we collected, it was exactly how Matt described it. It's very reworked. So it's almost like a pebble conglomerate in some places too, with a tuffaceous matrix. So the goal then would be to separate out the matrix from the clasts and be able to date just the matrix material. That we're in the process of getting all the samples that we collected, extracting the zircons out, and then hopefully the lab will be up and running early next year that we can start to get some dates on the samples that we collected this past summer, and then as well as stuff from the Olympic Peninsula from the last 2 summers.
Oh, good. Well, so that was Erin Donaghy back during the Crazy Eocene series. And here she is last month at her new job at UNLV, and to prep for our little Zoom interview, she looked up the date that they actually found, finally, with that Sunich Tuff from the Chumstick, which is ash that potentially, according to Mike Eddy, probably was from the caldera that now is gone, but the golden horn is still there.
Sub-basin, we had the unconformity unconstrained around 46.5 to 46 MA. And when you went into the field with us, when was that, in 2021, and we collected those tough samples, those were at the very top of that stratigraphic section. And I was able to date those, and I just looked up the dates before we met. And those Sunich tuffs were right around 46.7.
46. Okay.
46.
So that paper waits for you. Aaron's published dates on the tuffs within the Chumstick, as well as all sorts of other things. I think you see what I'm doing, right? We're trying to make some connections, not from caldera to caldera, but now in this little interlude, we're making connections between proposed caldera sites and ash falling out of the sky, which you would think is only possible in the last million years because the ash is certainly going to go away. But here's ash from more than 45 million years old. It's hard. You got to break it open with a hammer. It's not loose ash like blowing around, but it's still there. And so how many more airfall tuffs exist from calderas in the Cascades. I saw some of you in the live chats like, did I misspeak? Are the calderas not tied to supervolcanoes, or are they tied to stratovolcanoes? I guess I'm still confused about that. All I have to work with as a quote-unquote recent example is Crater Lake, and everyone agrees that Mount Mazama was a stratovolcano, and it blew up, and the only thing left is the very base of that stratovolcano that's a caldera. Am I supposed to visualize that for every one of our calderas today? I'm not sure. The Hannigan caldera, I'm looking over my shoulder. The Hannigan caldera, was there a Hannigan stratovolcano? The Gamma Ridge caldera, which we're going to get to in a second, was there a Gamma Ridge stratovolcano, or whatever you want to call it? I'm not sure. Keep it going. We're going to go long today. So I emailed Mike after this connection and thinking about this and talking to Dave Tucker, and I said, Mike and Aaron, whatever, this was just 3 days ago. Late in this Dave Tucker interview recorded yesterday, I asked him where all of the airfall went in his list of more than a dozen calderas in the Cascades. And then in real time, when I was talking to Tucker during the interview, I remembered the Golden Horn and the Chumstick Tuffs. If you've got any time, here's some quick questions. Are there plans to publish on the connection between the Golden Horn batholith and the Chumstick Tuffs, like the McClincy Tuff, known as the Saanich Tuff? Is this the first time anybody's tied Ash Fall with a known Pluton in Washington? If yes, is this the first attempt? Is the first attempt from 49 million years ago or whatever? Are there any new plans to work with airfall and known volcanic centers? Was there a caldera at Golden Horn? If yes, is there a chance that any part of it remains in some form? Volcanics mapped a la Tucker's approach. Thanks, Nick. And I heard from Mike right away, and I did not hear from Erin because she's busy with a new job, and she saw that Mike replied, so she didn't bother. So this is great. So here's Mike Eddy, All-American. Nick, number one, I'd love to eventually work on connecting the two areas, Golden Horn and Chumstick. However, I have not put a student on it yet. It's high-risk, high-reward science. If there is a connection, and I think there is, then it becomes scientifically noteworthy. If there is not, then the project is only of local significance, and because of this, it has remained on the back burner. Number two, I'm not sure about Washington. Globally, there are very few places where a Pluton and an eruptive unit can be matched via composition in time. I've been interested in this problem since graduating, and I went to southern Nevada with Isla, central Nevada, and now Washington to try to connect volcanic and plutonic rocks. The connections in many of these places remain ambiguous. My read of these localities is that the shallow level intrusions seem to form immediately after eruption and do not predate it. However, I think other researchers are more comfortable making links at Searchlight Pluton. 3. This is one of the, I got this email like 10 minutes after I sent it. Like, this guy's just a robot. It's amazing, dense, beautifully written emails. This is one of the main, don't take it wrong, Mike. You're not a robot. You're very impressive. This is one of the main goals of the Spirit Lake project. Can we figure out the Pluton's relationship to eruptive tempo, eruptive style, etc.? In a perfect world, we would be able to say something like, if tomography detects a magma reservoir at X depth beneath an active volcano, this is the type of eruptive hazard that we predict. Number 4, I think there might be the deep levels of a caldera preserved in the Golden Horn. If you look at the map in my 2016 paper, here's his 2016 paper, here's his map of the Golden Horn, here's his cross-section coming through, so here's A to A prime. So this portion is this portion. I'm not totally sure what he's saying here. Maybe you can see it. If you look at my map, I have a downdropped block that looks elliptical in the southern part of the Pluton. I don't think anyone has spent more than a day or two trying to follow up on the nature of that structure. Ideally, we'd go up the glacial cirques surrounding Civil Star Mountain to map and investigate it. I just haven't had the opportunity to do it. So he's got something that maybe if he makes his eyes go fuzzy, he can see a caldera, at least the base of a caldera in this. He's not saying this whole thing is caldera fill, is he? This is a pluton, right? Everything's granite. All right. Anyway, thank you, Mike, for your time. And here's one of the Mike Eddy plots showing age ranges within different portions of the Golden Horn. So that connection is there, and that geochemistry is there. Well, let me go to the gal upstairs, a little closer to heaven. Is she interested in chasing ash fall tied to work she would do in the goat rocks, for instance? Something as well. Late in that talk with Tucker yesterday, I'm like, where is all the airfall downwind from all these things? And he's like, well, it's really old, so you can't expect to see much. I don't know. Like, I think that's what I'm going to try to do this spring with Geology 351 is to just teach myself all these known tephras in eastern Washington, let's say, and then are we sure they're all from the Cascades, or are we sure they're all from the last million years?
Sure.
And would you? Okay, now I'm really thinking outside the box. Would you have any interest in working with tephras that are truly downwind deposits as some sort of chasing mechanism from what geochemically or something you put your finger on up in the mountains?
Absolutely. I'd be tricky because, those deposits get reworked. And so it's hard to know if you're looking at, primitive, not in the sense of composition, but like true representation of the exploded material. But you can still learn a lot, like you're saying, from the chemistry of those deposits and the minerals in those deposits and what the minerals are recording. So yeah, I mean, with my tool set, I could think of all sorts of things we could do, but I'd be surprised if we found these deposits.
I guess so. I guess that's why it hasn't happened to this point, or maybe it has and it's sitting in some master's thesis here or there collecting dust. But my gut feeling is like telling stories and saying, this thing you drive by every time you go to Pullman, well, that thing is actually a blown up part of that thing over there. It's like, what the
I
heck?
think that's so cool.
We're going long, just letting you know. If you want to stick with us, great. If you have to leave and catch us on replay, that's fine. Thanks. We're going long. We got to finish in Goat Rocks today. Come on. Too much fun. Gamma Ridge Caldera. This is the Glacier Peak area. So we are now leaving this area. We're leaving this area. We're now down here. I know very little about this caldera. I have a few thoughts. The Gamma Ridge Caldera is the mapped and known caldera where Glacier Peak composite cone stands today. Lindsay Malone, photos. 2.2 to 1.8 million year old caldera. Those are the best dates we have thus far for the Gamma Peak caldera. There's a Gamma Ridge. I don't know. Gamma Ridge. Just some enticing photographs. You're like, give me more on this. I don't think we have more. Moron. Talking to myself. Pink and red volcanics. Gamma Ridge. Tough country, probably. Not easy to get up into that country, but looks enticing, doesn't it? Purple. And I'm sorry, now I'm looking at every caldera photo. I'm like, where's the ash? You're like, oh, I don't think you'd find ash that's 1.8 million years old. Like, well, we've got ash that's 46.7 million years old. We do? Yeah. Aaron Donaghy, Mike Eddy. Oh, great photos, Lindsay. Thank you. Is that you? We're near Glacier Peak volcano. Gary, yeah. I gave you a bunch of photos, Nick. Hope you use them. Not sure if you've got the high-res ones. Better safe than sorry. The guys were sitting, so I asked Gary about this photo. Look at this photo. Photo taken by Gary, yet another Gary, 90-year-old Gary. Gary Rose, 1959 photo. This is Iris Spring. Some of you know that name. And Keith and John and Dave. And I'm like, Gary, Gary Jr., what's the name? What's the story here? The guys were sitting in Kennedy Hot Springs at the base of Glacier Peak volcano after a rainy hike out from the glaciers. They were dropped off on a beautiful spring day in 1959 by a ski plane. My friend Gary Rose, just turned 90 years old, took the pic. They include Iris Spring and photographer Keith Gunner. No idea who John and Dave are. Keith Gunner, photographer. Iris Spring, popular author of hikes and I think geology even. Really cool photo. Okay, that's it for Gamma Ridge. Let's go down to Skykomish Peak Caldera. Now, I don't know if anybody has this on any map anywhere. I'm not even sure the Team Caldera has this one. But got an email from Josh from Woodinville. I don't know you, Josh, but thank you for your help. Nice things. I happen to be looking at the geological map of the North Cascades and notice some areas I visited were marked out as QTCC, which indicates possible caldera deposits. I can't find anything else about these, but I assume they're related, so I've referred to them as the Skykomish Peak. Okay, so Josh made this up. I love it. And he's been working with Lindsay. Okay, so maybe it is on the spreadsheet. Benchmark Mountain. All right, so Josh in Woodinville, thank you. So here's the full photo from the top of Benchmark Mountain looking northeast, Glacier Peak volcano, and then Josh is saying Skykomish Peak caldera deposit, question mark? Is this ash from the caldera? Push in. Here's the QTCC on the North Cascades map. This is total amateur hour here. But we're all, speculating now. And Josh has experience. So he's seen these places and is curious about them and took the time to show this map and give us a few more photos as well. This is Josh looking southeast from Johnson Mountain. Mount Stewart, Bijou the Cats at the base over there. Skykomish Peak caldera deposits, 1 to 5 million years old, question mark. Blue Lake, Fruitcake, Mount Rainier. More from Josh, looking west at Benchmark Mountain. Thank you, Josh, in Woodinville. Okay. This is our last major stop at Mount Daniel before we land at Goat Rocks. I'm not quitting until we get to Goat Rocks. You doing okay? Mount Daniel, you're like, I've never heard of it. Well, Mount Daniel is an area that I know almost nothing about, yet I could get to the trailhead within an hour from my house. That's embarrassing. So I mentioned a few episodes ago that I did not have the digital version of Erickson's thesis, petrology or paper, petrology of the composite Snoqualmie batholith, rainbow Snoqualmie batholith, everybody. And Jamie McDonald, if you remember him, Jamie sent me a digital version of not only the paper, but the map. You have both. Thank you, Jamie, for your help. I love the elegance and the simplicity of this map. This is from this paper in 1969. Snoqualmie Pass. Here's U.S. Highway 10, State Route 10, before Interstate 90 was invented and built. And here's the Snoqualmie batholith, or a portion of it. And we're going to zoom in on this area here. Goldmeyer Hot Springs, Garfield Mountain, Preacher Mountain, Mount Hinman, Mount Daniel. Mount Hinman, Mount Daniel. At the top of Gary Paul's list of episodes we're going to film this summer for Nick on the Rocks, the PBS video series, is Cathedral Rock right at Mount Daniel. So I'm extra motivated to learn what I can. But apparently there's a caldera hidden in the area. Let's investigate what we can together. So let's start with Gary's photos. View south from east ridge of Mount Daniel, standing on top of Mount Daniel looking looking south to the Citadel. Caldera Fill, question mark. Is this 25 million years old? Caldera Fill, is this Mount Daniel's andesite tied to it? Andesite, SWOC, orange time. Caldera Fill, Circle Lake. This is not that far from where I live. It's not that far from Snoqualmie Pass. The Citadel, with Mount Stewart in the background. Now I'm really starting to feel rotten because I've spent more than 30 years here. I've not been up to see this stuff. And I am newly fascinated because, remember, this is the thing that Mike Eddy brought up because he had 25 million year old rhyolitic domes down in the Teanaway, if you remember. Remember? Well, now these are landmarks I see every morning walking to school. You know Gary Paul photos when you see them now, right? View north from the top of Mount Daniel. So everything's red so far in our presentation of the Mount Daniel, Snoqualmie Pass, Cathedral Rock scene. Everything's red so far. We're going to have a little wrench here late in our discussion. Photo of some detail of the Mount Daniel andesite, red time. Photo of the rhyolite up at Mount Daniel, rhyolite. BADR, right, Jeff Tepper? It's ARC, baby. ARC. Cathedral Rock, which Gary wants this to be the centerpiece of our episode. I can understand why. But is there more than a ghost volcano story here? Is there a caldera story here? Who can we read? Who can we learn from? Who studied this area in the literature? Oh, wow. Cle Elum River Valley. We're even getting closer to my house. And Gulp Mountain. 25 million year old Mount Daniel volcanics on the northwest side, and orange SWOC time from the 50s, the sandstones and conglomerates, Chuckanut age essentially. Lindsay Malone, again, SWOC on Davis Peak, 25 million year old Mount Daniel volcanics on the northwest side. Thank you. This has got to be you, Lindsay. Nice photo. Gulp Mountain Caldera, question mark? Well, look who we have here. In 1965, at a regional or sectional meeting of the GSA in Fresno, California, April of 1965, Paul Hammond, the Gulp Mountain Cauldron, in other words, caldera, a volcanic tectonic subsidence structure of early tertiary age, preliminary study. The Gulp Mountain Caldera lies 20 miles northwest of Cle Elum. It's oval, 3 miles wide, 4.5 miles long. Almost all of it is periphery. The caldera is bounded by an intensively brecciated fault zone. Along the southwest margin of the caldera, the zone is intruded by dacite porphyry, which fills the vent through which the magma was ejected. Evacuation of the magma chamber permitted subsidence of the caldera. The margins are obscured by intrusions of quartz diorite, granodiorite, which is emplaced after the things collapsed. Well, that's from 1965. And then there's this Eric Simonson 1981 master's thesis. Nobody talks about that. How are you supposed to find that? I can't find a digital copy, you say. Simonson, 1981? Where the title is actually Tertiary Volcanic Rocks of Mount Daniel area. This sounds perfect. He did a study, a graduate study under Joe Vance at the University of Washington. This is from Lindsay Malone, the star of today's episode. This is obviously not a professional scan job. In speaking with the librarians wait a minute, is this another callback to last winter? Are we going back to the idea where somebody watching these programs is going to physically go to a reference library, talk to the librarians, try to find something that's in the basement of some vault, get dust it off, get it up, and have somebody take pictures of it? With the Brett's journals, that's what we did last winter. With the Simonson 1981 master's thesis, that's exactly what Lindsay Malone in Seattle did earlier this week. She went to the library at the University of Washington. I don't know if you took a day off of work or not, Lindsay. In speaking with the librarians, they mentioned that could cost up to a couple $100 to do a professional scan. They just encouraged me to use a do-it-yourself scanner. If there's reason to have it professionally scanned, let me know. I took photos of my trip. Okay, let's go. Let's go to the University of Washington's campus, Lindsay. This is a couple days ago, maybe Tuesday of this week. Let's go into the library. Lindsay Malone, forest ecologist. Extra duty here. Thank you, Lindsay. All I can say is thank you. Lindsay in the live chat says, I have a lot of work and life to make up after this week. Oh my God, seriously. Thank you. So I don't know if this is the professional, this must be the do-it-yourself thing. So this is where you scan this entire thesis for us. And this thesis from 1981 has only been checked out a handful of times since it was put together. The last time it was checked out was more than 25 years ago. I'm just going through the Eric Simonson's thesis. Thought you might appreciate the thrill of pulling out the map from the back pocket and finding a hand-colored geologic quad that tells the story of a place you love or are really curious about. Thank you all for the motivation and encouragement to go digging, as I've always wanted to learn more about Mount Daniel for years. And there's even Eric acknowledging Paul Hammond in the acknowledgments. So here in the back of the I don't know how many of these exist, but there's one at the University of Washington Library. Tucked in the back is a hand-colored map. Lindsay didn't do this. I think maybe Simonson himself did it, not using our colors. But the Vincent Rhyolite, the Mount Stewart Granodiorite, the Snoqualmie Batholith, the intrusive andesite, the Mount Daniel volcanic rocks. There's Cathedral Rock, Peggy's Pond. Priceless. Priceless. Everybody's thanking Lindsay in the live chat. Soak it in, Lindsay. Take a bow. So this entire thing waits for you at the website. The entire master's thesis on the Mount Daniel volcanics is there for you. I don't know how long that took, Lindsay, but she sent the whole thing to us. It's available for you to read. I don't think even Mike Eddy has seen this. I doubt he has. And he was interested, remember. He and Isla almost came to Mount Daniel as opposed to Spirit Lake Pluton. They were so intrigued by the area. Maybe this will nudge Mike and Isla over the edge, and they'll start working up here at Daniel. I asked yesterday for some last-minute help. I got the guts to do that. So Lindsay yesterday afternoon, just as I was waking up from my nap, sent this. I'm going to read it quickly. Reading about Mount Daniel volcanics makes me think of an older, smaller version of the Goat Rocks with multiple plugs, vents, and cones, ? It also reminds me of Hannigan with caldera remnants and the nearby young granodiorites. Seems like Mount Daniel and nearby Goat Mountain and Cone Mountain may have similar story to volcanics of Fife's Peak and Stevens Ridge up by Mount Rainier. Nick had some questions. I basically said, can you guys summarize a few main points from that thesis? Yeah, Simonson suggests potential caldera in the Daniel vicinity. Key landmarks? Sure. Mount Daniel, the Citadel, Cathedral Rock, Pea Soup Lake, La Bonne Gap, that's French, Straight Creek Fault, underlying Squawk Formation. Is there a slightly younger Pluton intruding the caldera? That's a pet thing that I like from the Holy Trinity. It's possible. Several Snoqualmie dates are just slightly younger than Daniel, but data in his thesis suggest that the Snoqualmie batholith is rainbow, similar to the Chilliwack. Evidence for a caldera source at Mount Daniel is supported by several lines of evidence. The large volume of pyroclastic rocks, the lack of any major vent in the area, preserving volcanic sequence, indicating a possible caldera to the west that was later engulfed by the Snoqualmie batholith. In addition, the Goat Mountain volcanic rocks immediately south of Mount Daniel appear to have been erupted from a similar vent, which is well preserved. That's from Hammond, 1965. These rocks represent Mount Daniel ash flows. Hannah, this is really close to where we live. I know it's a bit of an effort to get up there. Jordan can bushwhack. Let's go. A Goat Mountain caldera, 5 kilometers in diameter, is clearly defined by ring fractures, occupied by locally derived tuffs and caldera collapse breccias. The large slides of clast in the Daniel tuff breccias and their distance from caldera mountain source, a Goat Mountain source, demonstrate the Daniels rocks had a different source. Collapse of the caldera, silicic eruptive cycle, fracturing tuff breccias. I'm skimming now, obviously. Yeah, all that stuff is buried in the thesis. Good detail. And some dates now from Joe Vance and his graduate student Simonson in the early 80s. 24.6, 25.1, 26.7, plus or minus, 1. These are not Mike Eddy dates. But if you read a little bit more carefully, the narration changes a little bit. The narratives start to change. Is there some green stuff in Snoqualmie patholith? Is the caldera more green than it is red? Is there some brown set of intrusives? Unclear whether the Mount Daniel andesites predate the snow. So in other words, and I think Mike Eddy did get to this point, he's like, there's a lot to work out. Looks like a cool area. There's a lot to work out, similar to Goat Rocks, and similar to Goat Rocks in the rugged terrain and the beautiful alpine scene that exists. Pacific Crest Trail goes right through the area. Still notes from Lindsay, typed out from reading Simonson's thesis. Gold medal performance by Lindsay Malone. Mount Daniel volcanics, tough breccias, similar age and origin to the ash flows of the Stevens Ridge up by Rainier. The andesite intrusive centers of the Mount Daniel summit area, the Citadel, the Cathedral Rock may correlate broadly with the red, Fife's Peak in Mount Rainier. Vance dated the Fife's Peak at 24.2. So then Backcountry Gary last night. Thanks, Lindsay. Awesome work. I don't have much to add. The big takeaway for me, Backcountry Gary, about the Daniel area and Goat, caldera or not, is having this rhyolitic eruptive device going boom just a bit earlier than the crystallization of the Snoqualmie batholith. Second point is that after looking at the variety of dates in the Chilliwack from the Mullen paper, I would not be surprised to find a similar age range in the Snoqualmie batholith, even there at Daniel and Goat. PhD, anyone? Looking forward to today's episode. And then Tom, Construction Tom, also adding some last-minute help. This all came in before supper last night. Rock types in a cross-section, a tectonovolcanic depression, caldera. I've attached snapshots of the Washington Geological Survey's geoportal, as well as a cross-section from the Tabor work. So here's the Mount Daniel area where a caldera is suspected, Goat Mountain. We can see these units. We can see some rhyolitic ring dikes that are cutting across some of the caldera fill deposits. We're back in fruitcake over here. Lindsay again. This is from earlier, a couple of weeks ago. Nick, not sure it fits your plans, but you asked about other events happening in the 30s, green time. And I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Mount Daniel. Kind of correlates with Oconomowoc time, green. The Snoqualmie batholith sits in the middle of the Straight Creek Fault. At least that's my read of the topography and geologic maps. And I checked with Gary. So this is Tom. All right, I'm living the life of a graduate student lately. So I did get 6 hours of sleep, which means I went to bed at 8 p.m. and I woke up at 2 this morning to put this one together. I'm not complaining, but I didn't sleep 8 hours because my eyes popped open. I'm like, I got more work to do on this episode Y. So I'd already been up for more than an hour. When who do I get an email from at 3:25 in the morning with Bijou on my lap? Frickin' Tom. So Tom either eyes popped open and said, I got to email one more thing or not. But like just a few hours ago, Tom's like, I hope it's not too late. I should have sent you this last night. This is the text that accompanies the cross-section I sent you. It's here that it's plainly spelled out that the Mount Daniels Goat Mountain stuff predates the Snoqualmie Batholith, not the other way around. There's 2 sentences that I highlighted. Uh-oh, where's the cross-section? Did I forget the cross-section? I think I did. Oh, no, I gave you the cross-section already. That's the cross-section. Thank you, Tom. And then here's the text. Tabor discusses the conflicting ages and conclude that younger ages may be reset by intrusions of nearby Snoqualmie batholith. The volcanic rocks of Mount Daniel appear to be too old to be directly related to the Snoqualmie batholith. Okay, so there's work to be done. Fine. And the amazing geology portal at Washington Geological Survey to the rescue yet again. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Okay, we're wrapping up. A couple final photos. We're back in green time suddenly. And the Vincent, that's French, Rhyolite Basin, also in the Mount Daniel area. Tough breccia here, wonders Lindsay. This is all on our side of the Cascade Crest in Kittitas County. Crazy. We made it, and I'm not going to quit right yet, because to finish out this episode, we're not that late, I guess. To finish out this episode, I want to visit with Hannah one more time. And she's the leader of the Goat Rocks team. But she's looking at a caldera at Goat Rocks that has some familiar themes to what we've been thinking about from the caldera, from the Canada boundary all the way down to Goat Rocks. That's the point of this episode. We're not just visiting the Goat Rocks by taking off a blindfold and not have been looking at all around in Washington, period. We have our themes now. How weird is Goat Rocks? Really? Is it weird at all? If we keep finding these narratives in a half a dozen other places in Washington, like we've done today. So Jeff from Bellingham, whoever you are, thank you. Aerial shot, the Goat Rocks Wilderness, Mount Adams, everything purple here, but Goat Rocks is dead, as you all know. Thank you, Jeff in Bellingham. Has Gary Paul been to the Goat Rocks? Of course he has. Don't ask such stupid questions. Gary Paul, with a photo and a view near Conrad Meadows, South Fork, Tieton River. This is a huge pile of tephra that sits in the caldera at Goat Rocks, known as the Devil's Horn Caldera, 3.2 million years ago. Let's go there. Let's go there with Hannah Shamloo.
Interesting rhyolites and rhyolitic tephra, a caldera tied to the Goat Rocks. Let's learn from Hannah.
Let's hit it. Stay close, Fuji.
How did you find this spot?
This spot?
Yeah.
Kelly Wall.
Kelly Wall
Miss Kelly
knew
Wall.
this spot from her.
And Daryl Gussie and John Lasher.
Nice.
Yeah, she sent me a picture of this exposure before I saw it in real life, and oh my God, it's spectacular. You're gonna love it.
Oh, good.
Stay close, Fuji. Fuji. Fuji.
Oh, hello.
I know, right?
Hello. Oh, Hannah.
Pretty cool.
Oh my God.
That's what I said.
All right. So, first time I'm laying eyes on this. Jesus.
Telling ya.
Okay. How is...
Yeah, I think you should just take it in for a second. It's something else. This just lives
oh,
here.
my God. Okay, so...
This just lives here. We live an hour and a half. So this is just like a classic tuff deposit where you have airfall.
Airfall.
Which can often show tephra stratigraphy, depending on the intensity of the eruption. So that can change the actual grain size of the tephra that you're seeing. Now, I can't tell you that that's what we're actually looking at, but sometimes that's what makes up these layers, is different grain sizes. So you can think of it as maybe separate pulses in a single eruptive event. Again, I'm overinterpreting here, but this is what it could be.
Well,
but yeah, this is a very large tuff, high silica rhyolite tuff.
okay, well, let me... So I've been teaching about the Goat Rocks volcano, singular.
Yeah.
Couple final shots and we're done. Back with Lindsay Malone, who's also been to the Goat Rocks. And that caldera fill material is all over the place. And we're trained now. We kind of know loosely what we're looking at. And more of that caldera fill is stunning. Another photo from Gary. And there are more stories to pull out of the Goat Rocks project. And they're just starting. 2 women in their 30s, early career. Hannah with her students. And in episode Z, 5 days from now, we embrace the Goat Rocks project with open arms. It's time for some live question and answer at 9:43, a little bit later than usual, but I wanted to get to this point and we made it. I thank you for hanging in. We still have more than 900 live viewers on a Saturday morning, and this might be your last Saturday. I understand. This might be your last episode live because you can't join us during a work day on Thursdays if you live in North America. I understand. So if this is the last time we're together live, thank you. But those that can swing it, our last live stream will be at noon on Thursday, February 27th of 2025. Let's do a few questions with all that material. I enjoyed putting this one together. I hope you did too. I'm looking for some uppercase. I'm stalling here. A little delay in the live chat. Pretty quiet out there now. There we go. David from the Yukon has a question. Earlier you said that can't have come from a stratovolcano. It's too silicic. Thoughts on types of volcanoes that sit atop previously before collapsing into the calderas? Thanks, David. I did see you mention that earlier in the live chat and tried to address it then. I think I'll just repeat myself right now. I don't know if everyone is visualizing a stratovolcano standing where a caldera is mapped. I don't know. Maybe that's one thing I'll ask around in the next 5 days. I don't have much more to say there. Don from Los Angeles. Can anyone make an animated chronologic model of all the known caldera eruptions with corresponding topography contemporary to each eruption? Good thought, Don. I think we need... Oh, you mean from the inventory we have? And you know the gold, silver, and bronze and no metals within the spreadsheet. So I see what you're heading for. I'm not sure if we're anywhere close to being able to have something like that that has any meaning. But maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm being too conservative there. Thank you for the idea. Brett, if caldera ash is older than what would be expected to be likely, does that mean that the ash fell into a stagnant body of water, allowing it to compact into something that could withstand erosion better? Thank you, Brett. Hannah and a few others were mentioning, like, I don't know, like if I try to find some ash fall and it's been around for more than 1 million years, I'm paraphrasing, it's bound to be reworked, meaning that it's going to be blowing around or being moved around almost like a snow drift or getting in a stream and being screwed up, basically. And you're kind of getting at that too, I think. I don't know. I maybe that's a reason not to get too excited about the stuff falling out of the sky. I did find it interesting that Tucker says all of his caldera fill is hard. I think he said that. Like you needed a hammer to break it open in the Hannigan. But I think all that stuff we just saw with Hannah Shamloo at the Goat Rocks caldera is loose. Why? Is that true? Is it about the same age? They're both in the 3s-ish, right? Hannigan and Devil's Horns rhyolite. What's with all those devil's names, by the way? Come on, man. These are beautiful areas. Why do we need devil everything? I know the answer to that, but such a drag. Devil's Pitchfork, Devil's Tower, Devil's... Come on. Down to life. Jim, how do you decide if a hole in the ground is remains of a crater or caldera? Crater versus caldera is just size, as I understand it, Jim. But how do you decide you have a hole in the ground versus a true explosive or silicic event? I think it's the fill that's inside of the caldera that tells that story. And some of these other features like volcanic breccia, which are these kind of talus slopes on the inside of the caldera. I'm no expert. Susan, are these the first eruptions of a cone which could explain high silica content? The more mafic magma comes up through established crust. I like where your head is, Susan. I'm trying to find that pattern too. And I'm guilty, usually, of coming up with a narrative that's too broad and too cartoonish and is disregarding so much detail. But I think after talking to so many of these folks and reading some of the work, I think the relationship I like the most is that caldera is then intruded by a slightly younger magma. That one feels like it's real. But Susan, you're asking something different. First eruptions of a cone explain the high silica content, and the more mafic comes up later. I think that breaks down pretty quickly. As we will see in the last episode, Kelly Wall is going to give us 4 different cones that each of the cone chapters have a slightly different silica content story to tell. So I asked a similar question to Kelly. So Kelly will be featured in addition to Hannah and her students in our last episode. Pat Miller, are the calderas and peaks common in all volcanic arcs, or the Cascades somewhat unique? Great question. Don't know. Of course, we're not even dealing with the entire Oregon, the entire Cascade volcanic arc. We're just primarily focused on Washington. Hey, you know what we're going to do to finish? I know there's more questions there. We're running long anyway. Oregon people, this is for you. Let's go to a green caldera in Oregon to finish this episode. Is it in the high Cascades? It is not. But even this green caldera that's 29.5 million years old in the Pacific Northwest has some of the themes and features that we've been visiting today in Washington. It's not the full episode, but it's a polished PBS episode that I think will be a nice fit into this story. So let's find it. right here. And let's make it full screen. This is how we will finish. Smith Rock in Central Oregon, what a spot! Rock climbers come from all over to enjoy these challenging walls that tower above the Crooked River. But this gorgeous pink rock, what happened here long ago to create such unique-looking features? Geology is full of stories from long ago, and the story here is about as dramatic as we get with Mother Nature. Smith Rock is volcanic. It's rhyolite tuff from a series of absolutely mind-blowing explosions that were thousands of times larger than Mount St. Helens in 1980. Smith Rock is just a portion of a supervolcano that exploded here 29 million years ago. The Crooked River Caldera, a crater 25 miles wide, outlines where the eruption did its thing.
One of the things I think is so exciting about the Crooked River Caldera is it stretches from here at Smith Rock all the way to the Ochoco Reservoir, Grizzly to Powell Butte. It's a big feature.
During these eruptions, collapse of the magma chamber roof leaves a caldera, and surging away from the caldera are pyroclastic flows. White-hot, ground-hugging clouds of gas, rock, and ash. The flows eventually lose their heat and momentum, and they petrify. They become ash flow tuff, the pink rhyolite of Smith Rock. If you get right on these walls, in the caldera, in the state park, it's a light tan, that's the rhyolite tuff, but there's these individual angular blocks of rock. Some of them are limestones that are 500 million years old, hundreds of millions of years older than the volcanic activity here. So the innocent limestone beds were involved in this incredible explosion, collapse, deposits, and these angular blocks are recording that drama from long ago. The ash cloud during this explosion must have been amazing. But why are there ash flow tuffs within the caldera rim?
I think that's because the bottom is dropping out of it so fast that basically it's like a vacuum that sucks all that material back in.
So you remember Jason McClowry from earlier in the series? That was on a field trip where I was learning from Jason directly on the field trip, and I had the camera guy, Chris, with me, and I would learn something from Jason, and then the group would move on and hike to another spot, and I would just stay back with the camera guy, and we'd just do a quick little spot for the program. That was about as efficient as it gets. I've still got you here. I've got one more Nick on the Rocks clip that I had just in case I had time. I don't, but I think I want to tack it on now, if I can find it. Yeah. We're talking about ash fall, right? And what portion of today's program did we talk about ash fall from a caldera silicic event? That's right. Aaron Donaghy had that Sunich tuff from 46.7 million years ago. Well, there's a silicic tuff that fell out of the sky from a caldera 11.81 million years ago that's in Washington. Do you know where it is? The Saddle Mountains of central Washington. Full. How do I get rid of that? Look at this cliff face. It's so steep, and it reveals much of our history. On. What's going on? Am I going to regret finishing it this way? Full screen, slide only. Thank you.
Look at this cliff face. It's so steep, and it reveals much of our history. The rock layers are mostly basaltic lava flows stacked one on top of another. That's no surprise. The brown layers are found all through central Washington, from Dry Falls to the Gorge Amphitheater, from Hell's Canyon all the way down to the Oregon coast. But what's with that white layer close to the top that's sandwiched between basalt lava flows? The white layer is volcanic ash, 30 feet of it. I repeat, 30 feet of volcanic ash that fell out of the sky. That's been a puzzle for a long time. Is this from the Cascades? For a long time, nobody could figure it out. We now know the chemical details of this volcanic ash. And there's a perfect match to a volcano 500 miles away in southern Idaho, not the Cascades. This is a supervolcano story, not a Cascade subduction story. The supervolcano produced an amazing amount of volcanic ash, more than 1,000 times the volume of the famous 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption. Much of the American West showered in fine volcanic ash. So yes, it's true, the scale of these supervolcano explosions is off the charts. But in this ash, we have tiny little details preserved from 11.8 million years ago. Raindrops falling through an ash cloud, the rain turning to hail, the hail getting coated in ash and being perfectly preserved as accretionary lapilli. Right here. Look at those details. These hailstones are gone, but the ash coating remains. Thousands and thousands of accretionary lapilli. The most recent. And who did the work on those accretionary lapilli in the Cougar Point Tuff? Hans Schminke, who passed away in August of last year, classmate of Don Swanson, Johns Hopkins University, studying under Aaron Waters. It's a small world. Saddle Mountain's buried in ash. Thanks, Mom. A toast to you. Here's to you for joining us today for episode Y. I'm going to fix that mistake as soon as I'm done with you. Episode Y, called More Calderas. Yes, John, the Bruno Jarbidge Caldera near Twin Falls, Idaho. Here's to your health and the health of everyone in your family. Here's to Lindsay Malone, Queen Anne Hill in Seattle, Washington, the star of today's episode. It's not enough, but all I can do is say thank you, Lindsay. And here's to everyone in this community. It's a vibrant place. And the fact that you're still watching more than 2 hours later means a lot. Thank you. Okay, are we going to see each other again? Yeah, we are. Of course we are. We managed to get ourselves from the Baker area down to Goat Rocks in our last episode, Thursday at noon Pacific time, for episode Z, entitled Goat Rocks. Thanks, everybody. I love you. And goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA.
Physics students, goodbye.